My sister Caroline looked my fiancé straight in the eye and said, "She only wants you for your money, Aaron." My mother smiled the same way she smiled 9 years ago when she thought she had buried me for good. Ask her about the man she's been hiding. I didn't defend myself. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there in my own kitchen, holding my coffee with both hands, while the two people who were supposed to protect me tried to destroy the only good thing I had left. They had no idea Aaron had been collecting the truth for 4 months. They had no idea the man they were trying to use against me had been waiting 9 years to speak. They thought they were ending my wedding. What they actually did was wake up the silence I had been feeding for 9 years. My name is Lauren Hartwell. I'm 31 years old. If this story is already making you angry, hit like, subscribe, and drop your city and the time where you are right now. I want to know who's listening. Now let me take you back to where this really began. Not the kitchen. The kitchen was just the morning my family found out the silence they had been counting on had stopped paying interest. The story began 9 years earlier, in a hiring office on Madison Avenue when I was 22, and my mother decided I was not allowed to have a future that did not run through her. I own a design studio in Nashville called Hartwell Interiors, 6 employees, a corner space in the Gulch, a client list that mostly came from one phone call in 2023 from a woman whose husband played for the Predators. Last year, we billed just over $1.2 million. My family does not know that number. My family thinks I do freelance work. That misunderstanding is not an accident. I have spent 9 years curating exactly what my mother and my sister are allowed to know about me. I met Aaron Castellan in March of last year at a fundraiser for a children's hospital. He was the kind of man who asked me 3 questions about a Persian rug before he asked my name. He said his work was boring strategy consulting. Then I found out his boutique firm in Nashville and Atlanta was the reason 2 of my favorite clients had ever found me. He proposed on the 19th of September on the porch of a rented cabin in Asheville. I cried for 10 seconds and then I laughed, and he laughed with me. We did not tell my mother for 2 weeks. When I finally did, she said the words I had heard since I was 10 years old. "He's a wonderful catch, honey." That was the sentence. Not, "I'm so happy for you." Not, "Tell me everything." A catch. Like Aaron was a fish I had managed to pull out of a pond she had stocked. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday the 2nd of May at St. George's Episcopal in Belmead. 38 guests for the rehearsal dinner on Friday the 24th of April at the Hermitage downtown. 46 for the ceremony. My father, Edward, was driving in from Knoxville. My mother and my sister were on the guest list because I did not yet know how to write a list without them. 2 weeks before the rehearsal, my mother called me. "Honey, Caroline and I were thinking we'd come over Wednesday morning to help you with seating. You shouldn't be doing all this alone, sweetheart." I sat in my studio kitchen and looked at the iPad on my counter. The seating chart was finished. The flowers were paid. The menu was confirmed. There was nothing to help with. I knew that. She knew I knew. "That would be lovely, Mom, 8 o'clock. I hung up. I did not call Aaron. I texted him 3 words. "They're coming Wednesday." He replied with one. "Ready." Peace, I had learned by then, has an expiration date. My mother had been quiet for almost a year because she thought I had finally given her what she wanted. A nice man. A nice ring. A nice public ending to the long, embarrassing chapter of her younger daughter being too independent for her own good. She did not know what was sitting in Aaron's jacket pocket that Wednesday morning. She did not know what I had been collecting in a Google Doc called September 2025 for the past 8 months. She did not know that the breakdown she had been telling the family I had in 2017 had a witness, and that the witness had been waiting since 2017 to be asked one simple question. The kitchen was already lost when she stepped through the door. She just did not know it yet. I want to tell you about a girl who is 22. She is not me anymore, but she still lives in the back room of my chest, and on certain mornings I can hear her breathing. In May of 2017, I graduated from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville with a degree in interior design. I had not slept properly in 3 weeks. I had been waiting for a letter. The letter arrived on the 18th, on creamy paper with a discreetly embossed letterhead. Marlowe and Voss Design Group, Madison Avenue, New York. A summer internship. $2,800 a month for 3 months. Housing in a shared apartment in Murray Hill arranged through a small program the firm ran for out-of-town interns. The letter was signed by their creative director. His name was Theodore Marlowe. I called him to accept. He had a careful voice. He asked me about my portfolio. He asked me which palette I had used for the project on page 17. He asked me whether I had read a specific book by an Italian architect. I told him yes, and I told him why I disagreed with Chapter 4. There was a pause on his end, and then he laughed, and then he said, "I will see you on June 12th, Miss Hartwell." I framed the letter. I hung it on the wall over my desk in my undergraduate apartment. I called my father, who said he was proud of me. I called my mother, who asked the name of the firm 3 times. She asked the address. She asked the office phone number. She asked the name of the creative director. I read all of it to her from the letter. She wrote it down. I was dating a boy that summer. His name was Bryce Whitlock. He was a children's book illustrator. He drew frogs and small, confused-looking dogs. He was good and kind, and the wrong kind of suitable for my mother. He had agreed to come with me to New York. He had a sister in Brooklyn we could stay with at the start. I told my mother about Bryce in the same conversation as the letter. That was my mistake. She did not yell. She never yelled. She left a printout of an article on the kitchen counter 3 days later. The article was about divorce rates among, in her words, creative class couples. She left it there for 3 full days. I did not move it. Neither did she. On the morning of the 14th of June, 2 days before my flight, my mother knocked on my bedroom door at 7 in the morning with a coffee in one hand and an envelope in the other. "Baby, I am so sorry." She set the envelope on the bed. Inside was a letter on the same creamy paper as the offer. It said the firm regretted to inform me that, due to internal restructuring decisions affecting their summer cohort, the previously extended internship offer was being formally rescinded. The letter was dated the 12th of June. It was signed, in a thin black scrawl, T. Marlowe. I read it 3 times. My throat closed. "I called them this morning to ask about parking," my mother said. "They told me. I asked them to put it in writing so you could have closure. I am so sorry, honey." She sat next to me on the bed. She rubbed my back. I think I was crying. I do not remember. I did not call the firm back. That is the sentence I have spent 9 years asking myself about. I did not call them. Bryce told me to. He said, "Just call them. Just one more time." I said, "What is there to ask? The letter is final." I closed the laptop. I gave up the apartment in Murray Hill. I told the program coordinator through a polite return email that I would not be coming. I did not know my mother had typed the rescission letter on the family desktop. I did not know that the day before she had called the firm pretending to be a worried relative and told them, in a tight, regretful voice, that I had suffered a nervous breakdown and would not be able to take the internship. I did not know that 2 days after she handed me that envelope, my sister Caroline, who was 24 and unemployed and recently divorced from a man named Trevor Boone, boarded a flight to LaGuardia with a portfolio cover that was not hers and a name that was not hers either. I sat in my parents' house for 2 months. I tried to find freelance work. Nothing came. In July, my mother told me Caroline had decided to go explore New York for a few weeks, to clear her head from the divorce. She was gone all summer. In late October, Caroline came home. She did not want to talk about it. New York was overwhelming, she said. Lauren, you would have hated it. Mom was right. In November, 3 days after Thanksgiving, I packed 2 suitcases and a folding table and $1,200 in cash, and I drove from Knoxville to Nashville. I rented a studio apartment on Cleveland Street in East Nashville for $750 a month. I did not tell my family I was leaving until I had been gone 4 days, and for 9 years, I believed her. I will skip the years between 23 and 28 quickly, because they were not the point. They were the cost. I waited tables at a burger place in East Nashville called The Pharmacy. I worked the dinner shift from 4 to 11, 6 nights a week, for 18 months. I learned to balance 4 plates on one forearm. I learned to make eye contact with men who had been drinking and then look at the doorman until they looked at their food. In the mornings, I taught myself the rest of what I had already half-learned in college. I took 2 online certificate programs in commercial interior design. I read every book my father sent me at Christmas. He sent me one every December. He never wrote a note inside more than 2 words long, just because. In May of 2019, a woman at table 11 left me a $50 tip and a note on the receipt that said, "Your eye for color is wasted on tables." There was a single initial signed beneath it. M. I never found out who she was. I kept the receipt. I still have it in a small wooden box in my office. In 2019, my father divorced my mother. He moved to a smaller house in Knoxville. He started sending me $200 a month through Venmo. The memo line always read, "Just because." He did not ask me to acknowledge it. I did not. He kept sending it for 18 months. I used some of that money for the bond on my first commercial lease. I have never told him. In 2020, I designed a baby's room in Brentwood for $800. The mother told her friends. Her friends were the kind of women who told other friends. In March of 2023, I opened Hartwell Interiors. I rented a small storefront in the Gulch with a glass front. The first thing I hung on the wall was a photograph my mother took of me when I was 4 years old, drawing on the sidewalk in chalk. It is the only photograph of my childhood I kept. I framed it without thinking about why. By the autumn of 2024, I had 6 employees. We had projects in Belle Meade, in Mountain Brook, in Buckhead, in Lookout Mountain. I bought a used Honda Accord instead of the BMW my accountant said I could afford. I sent my mother a Christmas card every year with a photograph of my cat on it. I did not invite her to the studio. She did not ask. In December of 2024, an email landed in my inbox. The sender was an address I did not recognize, a long string of letters at protonmail.com. The subject line was 4 words, about 2017, read when ready. There was no body. There was one PDF attachment, 1 page. I opened it. It was an intern roster from a design firm I had not let myself say out loud since the morning my mother handed me the envelope. Marlowe and Voss Design Group, summer 2017, a grid of names and ID badge photos. On the 3rd row, 5th column, was a name I knew, Lauren Hartwell. Next to that name was a face. The face was not mine. The face was Caroline. Her hair was lighter. She was wearing glasses. Caroline had never worn glasses in her life. I closed the laptop. I did not open it for 3 days. When I did open it, the email was still there. I did not reply. I did not delete it. I did not look at it again until the following August. I told myself I had imagined the face. I told myself it could be a coincidence. I told myself a great many things in those 8 months. The truth is, I was afraid. I had built a life inside the silence my mother had pressed me into when I was 22. The silence had a shape. It had walls. It had a ceiling. I had decorated those walls. I had hung photographs and held parties and even fallen in love inside them. If I opened that email all the way, the walls would fall, and I would have to live in whatever the silence had been hiding. I was 30 years old. I was about to meet a man at a fundraiser who would ask me 3 questions about a rug. I was about to be loved properly for the first time. I was not, that December, ready to know. The walls came down anyway. They always do. It just took until August. Aaron proposed on the 19th of September. I said yes before he finished the sentence. The truth, though, is that I had been in the long beginning of a different story since 6 weeks before that. Since the 11th of August. Since a phone call. It was a Tuesday, 11:32 in the morning. I was in my studio reviewing renderings for a kitchen in Mountain Brook. The receptionist, Megan, picked up the front line. I heard her say, "She's in. Hold on one moment, please." Then she came to my office door. "Lauren, there's a Cassidy Riley from Pinecrest Brand Studio in Atlanta on hold for you. She says it's a verification call." I did not know anyone at Pinecrest. I did not know anyone named Cassidy. I picked up the phone. "Miss Hartwell, thank you for taking my call. I'm in our senior hiring office, and I'm reaching out as part of a final stage background process for an applicant. I have a question that may seem unusual." "Go ahead." "The candidate is Caroline Hartwell Boone. I believe she is your sister." I said nothing. Her resume lists a design internship at Marlowe and Voss in Manhattan, summer of 2017. Our standard verification call to the firm returned a record under the name Lauren Hartwell. When I asked the candidate, she explained that she had used her sister's name as a, quote, professional nickname during that internship. She also explained that the two of you had a, quote, shared portfolio at that point. I'm calling you because that explanation is unusual enough that I wanted to confirm it before we move forward. There is a particular kind of silence inside my head that has happened to me 3 times in my life. It is the silence right before my body figures out what my mind has just understood. The first time was in my bedroom at 22, the morning of the envelope. The third would be on Wednesday, April 15th, in my own kitchen. The second was that Tuesday in August on the studio phone. I said very clearly, "I have never worked at Marlowe and Voss. I have never been to Manhattan in a professional capacity. I have never shared a portfolio with my sister. I have no information about why she would say any of those things." The line was quiet for 4 seconds. "Thank you for being clear with me, Miss Hartwell. I'll need to follow up internally. I appreciate your time." She hung up. I sat at my desk for 40 minutes. Then I closed the door of my office. Then I opened my laptop and went into my email and searched for the word Marlowe. The anonymous email from December was the second result. I clicked on it. I opened the PDF. I made the image of Caroline's badge larger on the screen. I traced the smudge along the bottom of the badge with the tip of my finger. There was an ink mark there. A thumbprint. Near the corner of the L in Lauren. I opened a drawer in my desk and pulled out a small archival box I had moved with me from East Nashville to the Gulch and never opened. Inside that box was the envelope from 2017. The original offer letter from Marlowe and Voss. The rescission letter my mother had given me. I laid both letters side by side. I set my phone on the desk and turned on its flashlight. I held the offer letter beside the rescission letter under the light. The logo on the rescission letter was 4 millimeters smaller than the logo on the offer. The font of the director's name on the rescission was missing the dot above the lowercase I in Marlowe. The date on the rescission used periods between the numbers. American business letters use slashes. My mother had typed the rescission letter on the same family desktop she had used to print the bulletin for our church. I sat in my office until the sun went down. I did not call Aaron that night. I did not call my father. I did not call anyone. I poured myself a single glass of wine and watched the streetlight outside my window come on. I did not cry. I just watched the light. I did not call Aaron for 5 more days. He was not the first person I needed to find. If you have ever sat in a quiet room and realized that a story you had been living inside since you were 22 was not your story at all, drop one word in the comments. Just write witnessed. I would like to know how many of us there are. Then come back, because the man I needed to find first had been waiting 9 years for me to find him. I found Theodore Marlowe on LinkedIn in the third week of November. He had left Marlowe and Voss in 2020. He had founded his own boutique advisory firm in Tribeca called Marlowe Advisory. His profile photograph was a man with gray hair and a careful cardigan. He looked younger in the eyes than he should have. I sent him a message of 3 sentences. Mr. Marlowe, my name is Lauren Hartwell. In June of 2017, an internship offer was extended to me at Marlowe and Voss. I am told a woman impersonated me there that summer. I would like 15 minutes of your time, in person, when you are willing. He replied in 19 minutes. Miss Hartwell, I have been waiting 9 years for this message. I will make any time on Thursday, December 11th that works for you. I read the words I have been waiting 3 times. I closed the laptop. I went downstairs to my kitchen and made myself tea, and sat on the floor with my back against the cabinet until the kettle had stopped clicking. Then I bought a flight. On the 11th of December, I flew Nashville to LaGuardia on the first Delta out of BNA. The plane landed at 8:40 in the morning. I took a yellow cab through the Midtown Tunnel and down to Tribeca, and asked the driver to let me out a block early so I could walk the last block alone. The lobby of Marlowe Advisory was on the 12th floor of a building on Greenwich Street. Oak floors, a small reception desk with a single yellow tulip in a glass jar. A woman with gray hair stood behind the desk. Her nameplate read, Yvette. She looked at me for one long second. Miss Hartwell. She did not phrase it as a question. Yes. He's been waiting for you, please. She walked me back to a corner office. Theodore Marlowe stood up from behind his desk. He was a slim man in a gray cardigan over a white shirt. He looked at my face, and then he looked at a paper file already open on his desk, and then he looked at my face again. Do you have your offer letter with you, Miss Hartwell? I nodded. I pulled the letter from my bag. He took it. He laid it next to a page in the file on his desk. He held the 2 pages under his desk lamp. He was quiet for perhaps 8 seconds. Then he sat down. You're the real one. He said it to the desk, not to me. I sat down. He poured me water from a carafe. I had 2 suspicions in 2017, Miss Hartwell, and I have carried both of them since. The first was that the young woman who arrived under your name on the 12th of June was not the designer I had spoken to on the phone in May. She could not describe the color theory she had supposedly used in the project on page 17. She told me she did not remember her own paragraph in chapter 4. The second was that something had happened to you. We tried to call your home number twice in the second week of June. We left 2 voicemails. We never heard back. The young woman who arrived insisted she was you. She had what looked like your paperwork. She had a portfolio cover that matched the photographs you had sent us. We had no basis to call her a liar. We made the mistake. He paused. In October, after we had reasons to let her go for plagiarism, I tried to write a private note to the address on your original application. The address was a P.O. box. The note came back. I told myself I would let it rest. I told myself I had imagined a problem out of an ordinary cohort failure. I lied to myself about it for 9 years. He pushed a black binder across the desk to me. This is what we kept. The intake form, the badge photograph, the performance reviews, the plagiarism findings, the 2 phone numbers we tried in June, the text of both voicemails, the internal note from October when I tried to write to you, the signed termination letter. The signature on her termination is not yours. The signature on her original intake is not yours either. I touched the binder. I did not open it. Mr. Marlowe, my mother had my old phone that June. I never received those voicemails. The signature on the intake form would have been my sister Caroline's, who was 24 that summer and unemployed. His eyes closed for 1 second. I see. I looked at the small painting on the wall behind his desk. It was abstract, in palettes of bone and rust and a deep green I had used in my undergraduate portfolio. That painting? I said. Yes. That's from my portfolio. Yes. I purchased the original from an auction in 2019. I knew the work. I wanted it nearby. I did not cry until I was back in the elevator. I cried in the cab on the way to LaGuardia. I cried in the gate area at the airport. I called my father from the gate. I had not spoken to my father in 9 years. He answered on the second ring. Lauren? Dad. He started to cry before I did. I'll be there. Whatever you need. Whenever. I waited 3 more days before I called Aaron. I needed the binder in my hands. On the 15th of December, on a Monday night, I asked Aaron to come over after work. He arrived at 6:12. It was raining. He took off his coat and looked at the binder open on my coffee table and did not say anything. I said, I need you to listen until I am done. Then I will let you ask anything. He sat down. I started where I needed to start. June of 2017. A train I never boarded. An envelope on a bed. A sister who flew to New York in a name that was not hers. A creative director who had carried a binder for 9 years. I talked for 14 minutes. He did not interrupt once. I had counted the time on the kitchen clock in advance, because I had been afraid of what would happen in his face. The face did not change. He looked at the photographs of the rescission letters side by side with the offer. He looked at the badge image of Caroline. He looked at the printout of the termination letter signed in a hand that was not mine. When I stopped talking, he said one sentence. You didn't have a breakdown. No. I knew something wasn't right. He pulled out his phone. He opened a notes app. He turned it around toward me. There was a file titled Lauren, Thanksgiving. I scrolled through it. He had taken 4 notes during the meal at his parents' house on the 25th of November. Each note was a sentence my mother or Caroline had said about my breakdown that did not match the sentence one of them had said earlier in the same conversation. He had been listening for 4 hours and writing in his lap. How long have you been keeping that? Since Thanksgiving. You didn't say anything to me. You were doing your work. I was doing mine. He took my hand. He held it for a long time. What do you want, Lauren? I told him. I did not want to file a lawsuit. I did not want the police. The statute had run on every piece of it. I wanted the silence to stop. I wanted my mother and my sister to be in a room with the people they cared about most when the silence stopped. I wanted my father back. I wanted a wedding that was actually mine. Aaron listened. Then he said, if we do this in public, we do it where they will not be able to come back from it. Yes. Friday night, April 24th. The Hermitage. Yes. He took his time. He walked into my kitchen. He came back with a cup of tea. He set it down. When does Theodore fly down for the rehearsal? Friday at 6. What time is the flight? He did not ask if I was sure. He asked what time. That was the moment I knew exactly who I was about to marry. We spent the next 4 months getting ready, quietly. I gave Aaron the password to the Google Doc I had been keeping since September. He started his own beneath mine. He spoke to his father, Charles Castellan, about getting Brendan Voss invited to the rehearsal under the guise of a friendly business introduction. Brendan was the younger cousin of Henrik Voss, who had co-founded Marlowe and Voss with Theodore in 1998. Brendan had been in the room when the firm had decided to terminate Lauren Hartwell for plagiarism in October of 2017. Aaron's father agreed without asking why. Aaron's father had liked me on sight. So had his mother, Helen. So had his uncle, Walter. In early March, my mother hired a wedding consultant I had not asked for, a woman named Vivian Drexel. She called my studio with too many details that should not have been hers to know. I let her think she had access. Erin and I took screenshots of every message she sent. In the second week of March, Caroline ran into Erin at a bar in Germantown called Henrietta Red. She was drinking white wine. She talked for 40 minutes about how I had never quite recovered from 2017, about how she just hoped I wasn't putting him through what I put our family through. Erin paid for his drink and left. He told me that night. I smiled at him. "She's testing the story," he said. "She's about to find out the story has witnesses." A week later, his mother received an anonymous letter on plain white paper. "Before your son marries this woman, ask her about the man she's been seeing in Manhattan." Helen called Erin. She had read it once, calmly, and burned it. "I just thought you should know, honey." She did not call me. She trusted me. I cried in the studio bathroom for 10 minutes after Erin told me. Not because I was afraid, because I had not known what it felt like, until then, to be trusted by an older woman. In the last week of March, my mother and my sister came to my apartment for Sunday brunch. They came at 11. They brought a bouquet of lilies. Caroline complimented my counters. She had not been in my apartment in 2 years. I put out bagels and lox and a pitcher of mimosas. We sat. Caroline picked up the framed photograph on my console of Erin and me on the porch in Asheville, the night he proposed. She turned the frame over in her hands. She set it down a little too softly. I poured her a mimosa. "You always did land on your feet, didn't you?" she said. "After everything." My mother smiled into her glass. We moved to the iPad on the kitchen counter. I had the seating chart up. I had not invited my mother to weigh in on it. She wanted to weigh in anyway. She noticed that Erin's mother Helen was seated at table 1 and she, Patricia, was seated at table 4. She froze for 1 second. Caroline noticed. "Of course Erin's mother gets the front, Mom," Caroline said sweetly. "That's the new family now." My mother said, in the same voice she had used the morning of the rescission letter, "Honey, don't you think your own mother should be at the front?" "Erin's parents are hosting the rehearsal, Mom. The seating reflects that." My mother looked at Caroline. It was a look I had seen exactly twice in my life. The most recent time before that had been in the kitchen of my parents' house in the second week of June, 2017. I had not known at the time what that look meant. I knew now. I needed to step out to take a call. Theodore was confirming his flight times for the rehearsal. I walked to the hallway and answered. "Yes. Friday, 6 p.m., the Hermitage." I walked back into the kitchen. I set my phone face down on the console near the door. Caroline excused herself to go wash her hands. The bathroom was off the kitchen. The hallway was not on her way. When I came back, my phone was face down where I had left it. The angle was different by perhaps 2 degrees. The screen had been lit when she touched it. The most recent message visible would have been Theodore confirming Friday at 6 at the Hermitage. Caroline returned to the kitchen 4 minutes later, slightly flushed. My mother said, "Caroline, honey, are you all right?" "Yes, Mom." They left at 1 o'clock. They thanked me for brunch. They each kissed me on the cheek. I watched their Lexus pull out of my building's circular drive. As soon as it cleared the gate, I called Erin. She just saw a confirmation message for Friday with a man named Theodore at 6 at the Hermitage. "Good," Erin said. That afternoon, Caroline texted my mother a single line. "He's older. Like, way older. Some Theodore guy. We have until Friday." My mother texted back 4 words. "Then we move now." I know what those texts said because Caroline never thought to delete them. For 3 days, my mother did not call. On Tuesday night, the 14th of April, she called. "Honey, let me come tomorrow morning. We need to talk before the rehearsal. Just family." 8 o'clock, I said. I hung up. I texted Erin 3 words. "They're coming Wednesday." He texted back 1. "Ready." Wednesday the 15th of April. They rang the bell at 3 minutes to 8. My mother was in a navy silk blouse. My sister was carrying an overnight bag. In case we stay over to help, sweetheart, Caroline said. I had not invited them to stay over. Aaron was in the second bedroom with the door cracked. He had been there since 6:30. He had brought a manila envelope from his car. The envelope was on the kitchen counter inside a brown grocery bag. There were 3 coffees on the counter when they walked in. I had poured them 10 minutes earlier. They were already going cold. You look thin, honey. My mother's voice was warm. Are you eating? I'm fine, Mom. Caroline complimented the apartment. She said the lighting was beautiful in this morning sun. My mother sat at the island. I sat across from her. Caroline stood at the window with her coffee. We made small talk for 8 minutes. About flowers, about a cousin's baby, about whether the Hermitage's chef was the same one who had done my cousin's wedding 2 years ago. Then Aaron walked in. He was wearing a navy Oxford shirt and gray slacks. He had not been planning to come, as far as my mother and Caroline knew. My mother's eyes moved across him and then to me and back to him. She missed half a second of breath. She recovered. Aaron, honey, I didn't know you'd be here. Patricia, Caroline, good morning. He poured himself a coffee. He stood with his back to the counter next to me. Caroline drank a swallow of her own coffee. She set the cup down. She turned to face Aaron. She made her face soft. Aaron, can I be honest with you? Please. She only wants you for your money, Aaron. I'm sorry to be the one to say it. I'm her sister. I love her. But you deserve to know. My mother set her coffee down. She smiled. It was the same smile I had not seen since the morning of the rescission letter. And honey, she said to Aaron, ask her about the man she's been hiding. I did not defend myself. I did not raise my voice. I held my coffee with both hands. Aaron looked at me. Not at them. At me. Do you want to answer that? He said. No, I said. I'd like them to leave my home. My mother's voice tightened. Lauren, be reasonable. This is about Aaron's safety, not your pride. The whole family will hear about this man eventually. Aaron set his coffee down. He reached into the grocery bag and pulled out the manila envelope. He set it on the counter between us. He did not open it. There is something in this envelope, Aaron said. It is going to come out. But not here. Not in front of 4 people. Patricia. Caroline. You will see it on Friday at the rehearsal, in front of everyone Lauren cares about. Until then, please leave. Caroline looked at the envelope. Her color drained. What is in there, Aaron? My mother asked. You'll see on Friday. Lauren, Caroline said. Her voice was shaking now. Lauren, you don't have to do this. I put my coffee down. I looked at my sister. Caroline, take your bag, get in the car. My mother stood up. Her hands were trembling slightly. She tried to hold Aaron's eyes. He looked back at her without anger. That was the part she could not handle. She had counted on him being shocked. He was not shocked. She picked up her purse. They left at 8:42. The door clicked. The apartment went still. Aaron did not gloat. I did not cry. I poured the cold coffees down the sink. He pulled out fresh cups. We sat at the island and drank in silence for a long time. They're going to spend the next 9 days lying about what happened in here, I said. Let them. Friday will speak louder than 9 days. He locked the envelope in my kitchen drawer. Friday, the 24th of April. The Hermitage Hotel Grand Ballroom. 6 o'clock for cocktails. 7 for the seated dinner. 38 guests. A piano player named Curtis Vale in the corner playing the kind of jazz standards that make a room of strangers easier on each other. I wore a long emerald silk dress. Aaron wore a navy suit. My father, Edward Hartwell, drove in from Knoxville. He arrived at 5:45 at the front of the hotel. He had not seen me in 9 years and 1 month. I walked out to the porte cochere alone to meet him. He stepped out of his car. He had aged 10 years in 9. He was wearing the same camel-colored sport coat he had owned since 2014. I hugged him in the doorway. He cried into my shoulder very quietly, the way men of his generation cried. He whispered, "I am sorry I was 9 years late." "You're on time now," I said. I led him inside. Helen Castellan was already in the ballroom doorway. She greeted my father with both hands. She had known he was coming. She had ordered him a specific bourbon. I introduced him around the room. Theodore Marlowe arrived at 6:15. I had told my mother and my sister, who arrived together at 6:08, that he was a family friend of Helen's from New York. I introduced him to my mother and my sister. He shook each of their hands. "Ms. Hartwell," he said to my mother, holding her hand for 1 second longer than was needed. "I believe we have spoken on the phone. Summer of 2017. My mother's face whitened for a quarter of a second. Then she smiled. "I'm afraid I don't recall." "That's all right," he said. "I do." He let her hand go. Brendan Voss was already in the ballroom, having arrived with Aaron's father. He was a solid, gray-haired man in a charcoal suit. He had a glass of red wine. He nodded to Theodore from across the room. Theodore nodded back. My mother did not see them nod. My sister did. We went to our tables at 7 o'clock. Helen Castellan stood at her place. She raised her glass. "To my future daughter-in-law," she said, "who built a quiet, beautiful life from absolutely nothing. To Lauren, who deserves every minute of this." The room raised their glasses. 36 glasses. My mother's hand on her glass was tight. Caroline's was tighter. When the toasts began to move around the room, my mother stood up. Her place was at table 4. She had not been asked to give a toast. The room turned to her politely. "I'd like to share something about our family. It's something Aaron deserves to hear before the wedding." Helen Castellan set her glass down with great care. Aaron's father, Charles, did not move. Walter Castellan, who was 67 and a retired federal judge, looked at his nephew over the rim of his glass. My mother smiled. "Lauren has always been our dreamer. She's always been a little fragile. We're so grateful, all of us, that Aaron has found her." Caroline stood up next. She did not wait for my mother to finish. She raised her glass. She smiled at Aaron. "As her older sister, I just want to say one thing tonight. Aaron, you're a good man, and good men deserve honesty. She only wants you for your money. I would not be telling you this if I did not love her enough to want her to be honest." A small sound went through the room. Not a gasp. A held breath, multiplied by 36. My mother nodded as if Caroline had just delivered a blessing. "And Aaron, dear, ask her about the man she's been hiding." Caroline smiled. It was a smile I had seen since I was 12 years old. I set my napkin down. I did not stand. I looked at Aaron. Aaron stood. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. He pulled out the manila envelope from my kitchen drawer. He set it on the table. He opened it. He took out a photograph and laid it on the white tablecloth. He picked it up again and held it out toward Caroline. "You mean this man?" he said. Caroline's eyes hit the photograph and stopped. The color left her face. She did not speak. "This is Theodore Marlowe," Aaron said. He turned a quarter turn so the room could see the photograph. It was a photograph I had taken in Tribeca in December, on Greenwich Street, in front of the building where Marlowe Advisory had its offices. Theodore was in the photograph. He was the man who had been waiting 9 years. Mr. Marlowe was, in 2017, the creative director who personally extended an internship offer to my fiancé. The offer was rescinded in writing on June 14th of that year by a letter signed in his name. The letter was a forgery. It was typed on my fiancé's mother's home computer. The internship was then taken, that summer, by a woman who flew to Manhattan under my fiancé's name. The woman was terminated by the firm in October for plagiarism. The signature on her termination letter is not my fiancé's. The signature on her intake form is not my fiancé's either. Would the room like to guess which woman in this ballroom took the internship? The room did not need to guess. Theodore stood up at table 8. He held up a slim black binder. "I have the original badge photograph here," he said calmly, addressing the room as one would address a small board meeting. "Anyone who would care to compare faces is welcome to. I have carried this folder for 9 years." My mother gripped Caroline's arm hard. She stood. Her voice broke before her composure did. "That was 9 years ago. Let it go." The room went very still. 11 seconds of stillness. I counted. My father stood up. He did not raise his voice. "Patricia, sit down. You've said enough for 1 decade." She did not sit. She looked around the room. She was looking for a friendly face. She did not find one. Walter Castellan, who had presided over 20 years' worth of federal courtrooms in Middle Tennessee, looked at her exactly the way a man looks at a witness who has just impeached herself. Walter put his glass down. "I think we'd all like to hear from Lauren," he said. I stood up. I did not take a piece of paper out. I did not lift my voice above conversational level. I looked first at my father, then at Helen, then at Aaron, and then at the room. "In June of 2017, I said, I was offered a paid summer internship at Marlowe and Voss Design Group in Manhattan. I never made it onto the train. The morning before my flight, my mother handed me a letter she had typed on our family desktop. The letter rescinded the offer in the firm's name. She had also called the firm in the previous days, posing as a relative, and told them I had had a nervous breakdown. My sister Caroline, who was 24 and unemployed, flew to New York on the date I was meant to fly. She took the internship in my name for 3 months. The firm terminated her in October for plagiarism. They have her badge photograph. They have her signature. They have the dates of 2 voicemails to my old phone that I never received because my mother had switched the SIM card. I was told my offer had been rescinded for restructuring. I was told I had a breakdown. For 9 years, I believed her. Last August, a hiring manager in Atlanta called me by mistake during a background check on Caroline's resume. That is the only reason any of us are standing in this room tonight. I paused. I looked at Theodore. He nodded slightly. "I am not here," I said, "to ruin anyone. I am here to take back what I should have known 9 years ago." I sat down. Brendan Voss stood up at table 2. "I'm sorry to interject," he said. "I'm Brendan Voss. My older cousin Henrik co-founded Marlowe and Voss with Theodore Marlowe in 1998. I was in the partner room when we made the decision to terminate the intern who came in under the name Lauren Hartwell. The woman we terminated for plagiarism is not the woman who is sitting at the head of this room tonight. I will swear to that in any deposition that anyone in this family would care to take." He sat down. The room shifted. I felt it physically. I have only felt it twice in my life. The first time was at the end of a freshman lecture at the University of Tennessee, when a professor leaned across his desk and told me my color theory was better than anyone else's in the class. The second was that night. My mother tried one more time. Her voice was thin now, almost girlish. "This is a misunderstanding. Lauren has had problems for years. She's been seeing therapists. We've been protecting her." Helen Castellan set her wineglass down. She turned in her chair. Her face was a face I would later see her use only twice more in my life, both times in defense of one of my children. "Patricia," Helen said. Her voice was perfectly level. "We have all heard enough. Your daughter has spoken. The witnesses have spoken. I think it would be best if you collected your things and went home now. Please." While there is still grace in this room, my mother stood for one more second. She tried to pull Caroline up by the arm. Caroline tried to stand. Her legs did not hold. She sat back into her chair. My mother walked to the side door of the ballroom alone. She left the room at 8:42. I noted the time. It was the same time she had left my kitchen the Wednesday before. Caroline put her head into her hands. A waiter came forward quietly. He helped Caroline up by the elbow. He walked her out. She did not look at me. The door closed. The ballroom was quiet for 11 seconds. I counted. Curtis Vale, in the corner, looked at Helen Castellan. Helen looked at her brother-in-law, Walter, who gave a single small nod. Curtis began to play. He played Clair de Lune. He played it softly. Walter Castellan stood up. He raised his glass. He did not have to raise his voice. To Lauren. 36 glasses came up. The ballroom raised them as one. If you have ever had a family member rewrite your story without your permission, type one word in the comments. Just write witnessed. Sometimes that is the entire point. Not revenge, not a courtroom. Just to be witnessed, correctly, by enough people, in one room. Helen Castellan came to my chair. She put her hand on my shoulder. "Sweetheart," she said, "you are home now. Do you understand me? This is home." I nodded. I did not cry until then. I cried one tear. I did not wipe it. My father came around the table from the other side. He stood next to Helen. He did not touch me. He waited until I reached out for him. For 9 years, I had eaten Thanksgivings alone in apartments I had paid for myself, and I had convinced myself that I preferred it. Standing between my father and Helen Castellan in that ballroom, I understood for the first time that solitude had never been my preference. It had only ever been my budget. The wedding was 8 days later, on Saturday the 2nd of May, at St. George's Episcopal Church in Belmead. The morning was cool and bright. I wore an ivory silk dress with long sleeves. Inside the bodice, against the seam over my heart, I had sewn a small square of black leather. I had cut it from the cover of the portfolio I had handmade in my final year of college, in the spring of 2017. The portfolio had never made it to New York. The cover came with me down the aisle. My father walked me. He was steadier than I expected. He cried during the readings. Theodore Marlowe read a short passage from a book on the craft of making things. He looked up after the line about the work that survives the silence, and he looked at me for 2 full seconds before he sat down. Aaron's vows were 5 sentences long. The 5th one was the one I will carry. I will never make you choose between being yourself and being loved. We had 36 guests. 2 seats were empty. The first empty seat was on my side of the aisle in the 2nd row, and it was for my grandmother, Constance Hartwell, who had died of pneumonia in May of 2014. I had set a single white iris on her chair. The second empty seat was the one my mother might have taken. Caroline did not come either. We had not invited them. We had not sent them a notice. They knew. They stayed in Knoxville. I learned the rest in the weeks that followed. 5 days after the rehearsal, Pinecrest Brand Studio rescinded its offer to Caroline. She had a phone call with their general counsel that lasted 4 minutes. The phone call was followed by a letter referencing material misrepresentations in her application. Within the next 10 days, 2 of Caroline's smaller consulting clients in Atlanta cut their retainers. Caroline put her townhouse on the market. She moved back to Knoxville. The week after the wedding, my mother was politely informed by the chair of the Knoxville Garden Club that her membership would not be renewed at the next annual review. 3 women she had been close with for 20 years stopped returning her phone calls. Her church book club, the one I had heard her describe 1,000 times as her lifeline, asked her to step back from leading discussions. My father moved into a small apartment 11 minutes from my studio. Theodore Marlowe stayed in Nashville for 2 more days after the wedding. He went to my studio. He stood for a long time in front of the abstract piece I had hung on the back wall the year I had opened the place. It was a sister to the one on his office wall in Tribeca. He did not buy it. He looked at it. He flew back to New York that Monday morning. He sent me a single email after he landed. The subject line was 9 words. Please tell me when the next exhibit opens. I did not file a single lawsuit. I did not need to. The truth had done its work. I wrote one short blog post on the Hartwell Interiors website about what it meant to design a room when no one in your family had ever designed one for you. The post was shared 22,000 times. I have not written another one since. On the first Monday after our honeymoon, I went into the studio. I made coffee. I opened my laptop. I opened a new project. The morning light came through the front window the way it always does in the Gulch in May, in a long slant across the floor. For 9 years, my family told a story about me. They told it at every dinner I was not at. They told it so often they began to believe it. They stole 9 years of my voice. They stole 9 years. They will not steal another sentence.